Toronto Maple Leafs are officially headed to Sweden for the NHL's Global Series, and we're not 100% sure that they're going to return as the same team we know them to be. There's lots of rumors swirling. Will William Nylander finally sign his contract extension in Sweden as a nice surprise and gift for his hometown faithful and, of course, the Leaf fans? And are the Leafs tough enough without Ryan Reaves in the lineup or in the organization? We'll get into that and more in this video. My name is Darius Domingues, and welcome back to Leafs Digest. Guys, we notice a lot of people, in fact 75% of our viewers, are not subscribed to the channel. So if you could do me a favor and everyone else who makes content on this channel a favor, hit that subscribe button so you can stay up to date with everything Toronto Maple Leafs. But without further ado, guys, the Toronto Maple Leafs are headed over to Sweden for the NHL's Global Series this weekend. They play 2 games in the next 12 days, or maybe it's 11 days at this point. 2 games in the next 11 days. So it's going to be, I'm missing some Maple Leafs hockey. They had a great win, and we'll get into it later in this video. I'll just touch on a little bit against the Vancouver Canucks, but man, 2 games in 11 days is going to be tough. And we got some interesting start times as well. Friday they play, I believe it's the Detroit Red Wings at 2 p.m. Eastern. And then Sunday, everyone has to wake up on Sunday early to watch them at 8 a.m. against the Minnesota Wild. It's gonna be a fun one. Should be interesting. But this week, the focus is gonna be on the Swedish players. They got Calle Järnkrok. I think they had more Swedish players last year. Obviously, Timothy Liljegren won't be participating this year, which is unfortunate. They got John Klingberg, who's gonna be able to play in Sweden, I think for the first time. And of course, William Nylander, the superstar of the season so far, leading the Leafs in points. He's been an absolute stud, so he gets to play. I think he said he bought like over 100 tickets for both games or something. His grandmother finally gets to watch him play in person, which is pretty cool. But I think there's some interesting things about the Leafs going to Sweden and after Sweden that we need to talk about and get into, because the injury bug is going around, but some players are returning as well. And we've talked about guys like Klingberg maybe coming out of the lineup. Is there, a possibility to trade him away? It's clearly not worked in Toronto. So if you take a look here, Sheldon Keefe has said that Connor Timmins, who's been out since the preseason, is progressing well and starting to get ahead of schedule. He could return soon. He wasn't expected to play in the 2 Sweden games, but he's made the trip. And they're now going to make a determination on his status later in the week, which I assume means before the games, the first game being on Friday. So that is interesting to keep in our back pockets a little bit and keep note of. Connor Timmins, right-handed defenseman, offensive defenseman. He's put on a lot of weight as well in the offseason, so he's trying to get heavier to be more of a physical presence. Could be a good add for the Leafs. I say add because they've missed him, but obviously part of the organization. But could be a nice add for the Leafs here at the end of November. And where does John Klingberg fit in? I'm not quite sure personally, okay? And if you've watched some of my other videos on the channel, not a big fan of John Klingberg and how he fits in with this team. But if we take a look here, per Sheldon Keefe, it's a maintenance day for John Klingberg, which was yesterday. Who isn't expected to skate tomorrow either. He did not skate when the Leafs touched down in Sweden, but they anticipate he'll be able to join Wednesday's workout and maybe, get back into the lineup and play on Friday. Obviously, they want to get this guy into the lineup. He's made the trip with the team to Sweden. He's from Sweden. Obviously, they're going to want to get him into those games. But could these 2 games in Sweden that he will probably play because you want to give the guy a chance to play in his home country, could they be the last 2 games in John Klingberg's career as a Toronto Maple Leafs? I'm not sure. I don't know if they're actively trying to shop him. We know there's some big movements, some big names, including Brody, who could be on his way out. Go check out Nick's video earlier on the channel for more news on that. But there's some interesting things going on with the Leafs, whether it be injuries, some of the guys starting to pick it up like Domi. There's just so much going on. And I'm excited to see how they do in Sweden, because Sweden, and we'll get into it later in the video, could be a major turning point one way or another for this team. So it's going to be exciting to wake up at 7 a.m. to get ready for the game on Sunday. So that should be interesting. But another really big storyline coming out of Sweden, or now heading into Sweden, is could William Nylander sign his contract extension in Sweden? Okay, there's been a lot of speculation all season long about, they weren't close before the season began. And obviously, the numbers aren't very close, and a lot of people, are saying there's some speculation about, maybe he'll sign when he's in his home country, right? Wouldn't that be nice to sign on the dotted line? A huge contract I'm sure he's going to get, and well-deserved. Let's not, make no mistake about it. But I don't know. It's very interesting. Could he sign in Sweden? I think that would be a great, early Christmas gift for all Leafs fans. And, he is a hero there in Sweden as well. One of the premier talents in the NHL, at the NHL level, coming out of Sweden right now. So if we take a look at his contract, kind of comparables and how he's matched up this season so far, I mean, he is an absolute stud. Guys, we have said it, all season, leads the team in points. He is top 5 in scoring in the league, actually, with 22 points. It's crazy. So are we looking at 10 million? Are we looking at 10.5? Are the Leafs going to be able to afford 4 guys making $11 million? And then, you throw Riley in there, who's almost at 8, so, 7.5. That's a little insane. That's a little intense. He's absolutely an elite winger in the league, never mind just on the Leafs. And for my money and my eyes, he is the best winger the Leafs have by far, especially this season. But are the Leafs ready to pay him? It's true. Are the Leafs ready to pay him? But look at the chart. I mean, the defense, could it get better? Sure, but he's not a bad defensive player, and he's absolutely an elite offensive player, okay? Just an absolute stud. I keep saying it. And the points he's putting up, the goals he's putting up, he's still on that point streak to start a season. Who's going to be able to beat that? You know what I mean? Somebody's going to, in the future, going to have to have an amazing start to a season. It's absolutely crazy. All right. I just love what I've seen from WIlliam Nylander. And it sucks that they didn't get the contract done before this season, because every time he scores a goal, I cheer, but I also die a little bit inside because I don't know what they're going to do with him. You can't trade him before the deadline. I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm getting excited. Can't trade him before the deadline because you're going to want to make a push in the playoffs. You want to keep a guy like this. How do you keep everyone? Everyone has no movement clauses. Oh, it's a mess that I feel like they could have sorted out, this past summer, but that's for another video. That is for another video. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think. What is he going to get? I was thinking coming into this year, 9.5 is fair for a player of his caliber. He could probably get more on the open market, but I was thinking 9.5 is quite fair. But now I'm thinking 10.5, 11. He's up there with the elite players. He's top 5 scoring in the league. He's up there with the best of the best. So he, in his eyes, I should be paid like the best of the best. And he has the argument, right? But let's take a look at a few things in terms of Nylander's contract, all right? So earlier in the season, Nylander, he started the new season by saying he wanted to remain in Toronto. He made it very clear. He wants to be here. There isn't really a conversation about him going anywhere else or this team, he might be a good fit on this team. He wants to play in Toronto. It's just the term and the money is the question, really. He said, I want to be here. This is where I want to play. But I'm going to let my agent and Brad Treliving take care of that. I'm not going to answer any more questions about my contract, which, William, we're not stupid, man. You're going to have to answer a lot of questions about your contract probably this week, especially being in Sweden. I think that's interesting. That's a huge factor. He wants to be here. He doesn't want to play anywhere else. And that's pretty obvious, right? He wants to be here. He wants to play here with this group of players. And I think that's a good thing for Leafs fans because a lot of players want to leave or not play here. You look at Ryan O'Reilly, didn't really want to play in Toronto. WIlliam Nylander wants to play in Toronto. He's built to play in Toronto. He's built for the media here, right? So I think on the Leafs side of things too, you want to retain a player of, who has that much skill and is built to handle the pressure of playing in Toronto. I think it's very important, but I just don't know what the answer is, how they get it done, who they move out, if they move him out. It's interesting. But if we take a look on the Brad Treliving side of things, positive vibes around the contract signing, which is great. We will continue to work away at it quietly in the background. And that was Brad Treliving on Sportsnet 590, The Fan, in regards to the Nylander negotiations, which doesn't add much to it, but they're working on it in the background. It's not radio silence. They're probably chipping away at it. Brad wants to get this guy locked up. He is on pace to score 50 goals. You probably want to lock him up before he achieves that because then the number's probably just going up and up and up. And I'm sure he's going to want 5 years, maybe less. Maybe he goes the Matthews route because these guys want to keep upping their salary every couple of years. It's very interesting to see. But I want to shift gears a little bit now towards what we saw on Saturday heading into Sweden and how Sweden could be a turning point for the Leafs. So finally, against the Vancouver Canucks, the troops were rallied. All right, the troops were finally rallied, and I love the discourse around it so far this week. There's a big hit. Giordano steps in. We've been crying for this to happen, for a Leaf to step in and show that the Leafs will not be pushed around like the teams of Leafs past with Darcy Tucker and Gary Roberts and guys like that. We've been begging for it to happen. It finally happens, and now there's discourse about Giordano stepping in. He's an older guy. It should be somebody else. It's a reaction. Confetti gloves. Get in there. Start punching some faces if they're taking liberties on your players, right? I love to see that. Reaves was scratched on Saturday, and it made a huge difference in terms of, the pace of the game. Reaves has been on for, 12 goals against and 0-4? Just awful. I think the honeymoon phase is kind of worn off a little bit, or very quickly as well. Bobby McMahon is a great player, great fourth-line player. He added a lot of... the fourth line scored 2 goals. I mean, he added a lot in that game. So that was great to see. And then Max Domi jumping in for Nick Robertson. You go to war for each other. That's the type of stuff we need to see more of. And they beat one of the best teams in the league in the Vancouver Canucks this year. They've been a surprise as well. And I talked about it in my last video. Like, you kind of look at Calgary like, yeah, we'll win that game, even though they squeezed out with the win. And then Vancouver's going to be tougher. Samsonov played great as well. That was a huge storyline. And they're all going to war for each other, which is what we were begging for years, right? So it's really nice to see that heading into Sweden, because if the vibes were off heading into Sweden, it could get really ugly because they're away from home, and who's going to get traded when we come back, which I still think there's going to be a trade, but I think that game sets the tone for Sweden. These guys will go to bat for each other. Will we continue to see that in these sets of games? There's going to be a lot of passion in these games. You got like Nylander and Klingberg and Jan Krok, these guys playing at home in their home country. They're going to want to have really good games, right? So I think this trip could really set the tone. And I think it's going to be interesting when we come back, because as we talked about in previous videos on the channel, go check them out. It looks like some moves are done. They're just waiting for them to get back from Sweden. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see once the trip is over. But guys, please check out some of our other content. That is it for me. My name is Darius Domingues. This has been Leafs Digest, and it's going to be very interesting to see how the Leafs Sweden trip goes. And I'm sure we'll see each other this week for some other content.